Hello, everyone. We are now here in my war journal. This is November 11th, which is 36 days since the war began, since October 7th. I wanted to sit down together with my mother,
Hi, that's me.
whose name is Aviva, and to talk. Those of you who have been following this have already seen one of my sessions with my father. And I also felt for a while now that my mother and I should sit down. But she's been partly the reason that this has taken so long is because of some activities she's been doing. So my mother, in her for most of her career, was a teacher in the American International School in Israel, and she taught English literature there, high schoolers. And when this horrible tragedy happened, so she found for the past few weeks she's been going down to Yam HaMelach, the Dead Sea, where some of the people that were evacuated from their homes, especially out of one of the Kibutzim called Be'eri, where there were really horrendous things that had happened there. Those, they had, of course, to be evacuated from there for the duration of the war and to recover, and that's where they've been housed up. And my mother's been going there to sort of be there and do some activities with the kids, and I understand also some of the adults now,
Yeah.
as of this past week. So I figured so we're gonna have like a talk now, and we'll start talking just in general, and then we'll move on to some of your experiences there down there in the Dead Sea, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe
Okay.
we'll do one session, maybe we'll do two. So we'll see how it goes. So do you want to maybe introduce yourself beyond what I said?
As Alicia said, my name's Aviva Rosensweig. I made Aliyah in 1974. I've raised my kids here, my family here, and I've taught at the American International School, which has people from all over the world. Always a very interesting place to work, and now I'm their communications coordinator. And I think that's all you need to know. Well, oh no, I have 4 children and 15 grandchildren, all of whom I love and am proud of.
Of course, we now have that on record.
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, I just one second. I just want to make sure that we're not interrupted by any kind of weird. Good. Okay. Fantastic. So so I guess I had asked you to sit down and talk even before you had decided to go volunteer. And at the time when we had spoken, I had asked you. I told you that I thought that these events, which I mean, people have been comparing them all across the globe as the worst day for Jews since the Holocaust. But you have a special connection to the Holocaust. I mean, I guess all Jews do, but you're a child of Holocaust survivors, and Holocaust has played a big role in your life. And so at the time, I had told you that when we spoke, I figured that one of the things we would speak about was how you were processing this event. So I thought maybe we would start with hearing how was the first week since you heard about it, and where did that. And it doesn't have to connect to the Holocaust. I'm simply reminding you that we had mentioned that in case that helps sort of direct some of your thoughts.
So let me start back at the beginning on October 7th. We're an Orthodox Jewish family, and therefore we couldn't hear the news. The first time I heard that anything had happened was when I came to the synagogue and I met your wife, Annette, and she told me that she'd heard a rumor that 1 or 2 terrorists had breached the border and that maybe they'd kidnapped a soldier. And after our experience with Gilad Shalit, with a soldier who was in captivity for over 5 years and was then released in a deal that we made for thousands of soldiers.
I think 1,000.
Yeah.
I think it was close to 1,000.
This was horrible enough. I didn't need for it to get any worse, for it to make me terribly sad and frightened and anxious about what was going to be next.
Yeah, I'm also pretty sure that many of the people, I think maybe even one of the heads, I think even Yehia Sinwar, and many of the people that today conducted the October 7th and organized the October 7th attack were released in that deal.
That's correct. Anyway, so as the day progressed, I was waiting for sundown when the holiday would be over and I could turn on the television, and I was feeling more and more anxious. I really didn't want the holiday to end. I was really afraid of what I would see. But of course, I could have never had any concept of what the reality was, which was so much worse. than we anticipated. And as you said, a day of the most Jewish deaths in one day since the Holocaust. 1,400 people were killed. Many people were taken. 220, not 30.
I think it got
kidnapped.
240. And by the way,
Okay.
just for the record, I think that the latest numbers, I think, are that actually more like something like 1,150 were killed.
Oh yeah.
And some of the people that we thought were killed were actually some of the mechablim, some of the terrorists that we had killed. So they were counted originally, but then they were.
And I also know, because of a funeral that happened last week in Be'eri, that there were people that they thought were Nechtaf, and then as they're sorting through the bodies and doing the autopsies and DNA testing, etc., they discover that people that they thought were still alive are in fact dead.
Yes.
So the numbers are
in flux anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I put on the television and I was absolutely horrified. I think that, there are different reactions to traumatic events. One is fight, one is flight, but a third one that is talked about a lot now is freeze. And that is certainly the one I most relate to. I felt like my emotions were numb. I couldn't believe what I was seeing or hearing. I was very, very, as I said, I was numb, and I expected to feel fear and I expected to feel anxiety, but instead I felt this kind of nothingness, as if I was watching something that couldn't be reality. It couldn't be that this was happening. And within a day or two, as the atrocities that had been happening became clearer and clearer, I started feeling, and the feelings were quite terrible, of course. And I certainly related it to the Holocaust. I felt that, in the sense that, as far as I'm concerned, and I think most right-thinking people are concerned, Hamas is pure evil. And I felt like we were looking into the same face of evil that we looked into when the Nazis were in power. And I had remembered the stories that my father told. My father was in Auschwitz. My mother was born in Germany, in Cologne, and she experienced Kristallnacht, after which she got out to England. And I remember, as I was growing up, thinking how lucky I was that I was born a generation later, that I didn't have to experience all those things, and also wondered if I would have survived, if I had experienced them, and was quite in awe of what my parents had succeeded to do, and not only surviving, but remaining sane and raising a good family and making a success of their lives and ultimately making Aliyah. And here I was now, obviously not the scope of 6 million Jews, but in terms of the essence of the conflict, here I was, like them, and like so many Jewish generations over 2,000 years, looking evil in the eye and wondering, how is this possible?
Actually, this raises like a question for me also. Over the course, I've known you for all my life.
That is true.
Yes. And there were, you teach in the American International School. You get to know a lot of people from different countries, different cultures, etc. And there was a time, I know, there was a period, at least, I don't remember the details because I was young. I was still young, too young to really delve deep into it, where you, were more inclined towards, at least considering, we always were like a more right wing, like center right home.
Yeah.
But there were periods in which I know that you were, at least thinking out loud about potential for peace and all these things. And I know that stuff has changed over the years. I'm not saying that was yesterday for you, but I'm curious, for a person who has so much of your work was about bridging over gaps of culture, etc., as part of a teacher of all these different students of different places, and who has a natural inclination to those things. So when you say you saw yourself looking into the face of evil, were you surprised that evil was there? Was that something that you had sort of, since many years, you've gone through things, you've known about the Holocaust? Was it something that you, sort of felt, I always knew it was there, now I see it?
Yeah, I think innately I'm a liberal. Okay, certainly where it comes to social things, politically, I would agree that I'm also center right, but just barely.
Yeah.
Center would be probably more accurate.
Yeah.
And I really want to believe that people are good and that peace is possible. And I had been looking at certain things that happened over time as blips. I remember one time that I did have this feeling, but not to this extreme, was Entebbe, when a plane was kidnapped to Uganda
in the 70s.
In the 70s, and where a selection actually took place, where Jews were separated from non-Jews. And I remember at the time also feeling like, oh, here it is. This is what I've been waiting for. But that resolved so quickly and so successfully that it didn't seem to leave a lasting mark on my general desire for peace or believe that peace would come. Over the last year, when all the demonstrations have been happening in Israel,
Right.
I have been thinking about the Holocaust again and thinking about all the people that had that were demonstrating and even threatening either not to go to the army or to move abroad. And I remember I think we even had this conversation where I said, do they think there's no anti-Semitism anymore? I mean, the issue they're demonstrating about is very, very important, but what about this overarching danger that we have?
I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you, but I spoke to a friend of mine during, so for those who don't know, like I'm assuming everybody does, but there was a lot of political strife leading up to this event about issues with the judicial reform, and people who objected to it, they felt like this was going to be a huge, attack on democracy. And so some of them were really talking about leaving the country, etc. So I spoke to a friend of mine. I was, doing this a lot, trying to talk to people that are on the opposite side of this debate, so that, to try and bridge that gap. And I said to him, when you say maybe I'll leave the country, I won't protect it, I won't go to the army, etc. It sounds like you mean that it's like better for it not to exist. And I think we can all agree that even if there's problems, even if you don't like the way it's managed, there's still one thing that this country for sure does, and that is help us protect us from anti-Semitism, which is why one of the main reasons why it was created. So then he wrote, we were chatting some of this on WhatsApp, and then he said to me, well, I've spoken about it with my wife, and she mentioned that there's also racism here in Israel. So I said to him, and I still have it written down so I can show it to you afterwards. I said to him, I mean, I know what you mean. There's racism like in lots of places, but I don't think that you understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think you're talking from the right historical context. We're talking about for 2,000 years, Jews being persecuted by law, Jews being pogromed just like on a regular basis, like a deep entrenched anti-Semitism that is everywhere in the culture. And what you're talking about is blips, is aberrations that are pursued, that are persecuted by law if they happen. So and I also felt that way, that they were, in a sense, some of them were fooling themselves that the world is a different place.
Yeah.
And it's not.
But like them, I have to say I'm horrified by the speed at which the support for Israel, for seeing the atrocities, morphed into anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, and outright hatred and disregard for anything that happens to Jews.
For sure.
So I do think that this is a seminal moment in terms of that, and I think this will be very hard for anyone to bury and to ignore going forward.
Yeah. So that was what you were feeling the first few days.
Yeah.
And so let's go from there.
So, I mean, that wasn't the only thing I was feeling.
Oh, you go on to more.
I was also just heartbroken over the children and the women and the men that had been kidnapped, the elderly, the disabled, the complete lack of discrimination of, not that anybody should be kidnapped, but then as atrocities came out, really feeling like I don't recognize this world anymore. I still don't know how to wrap my head around the incredible evil that happened on that day, and the fact that after seeing that evil, people could still say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and,
Yeah.
and advocate for the eradication
Right.
of Israel.
Have you watched some of the videos? Like, what have you done? Everybody finds their line, right,
Yeah.
of how much they let themselves get exposed.
I watched as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't want to. A friend of mine who's a trauma therapist has often said that wherever you can, you shouldn't expose yourself to that if
Mm-hmm.
possible, because it enters you and
Yeah.
it doesn't leave. And I did not want that stuff to enter me.
Yeah, me too.
Today, when you showed me the article by Roni Geldfish, and she talked about the content of some of the videos that she said, even that felt to me like I'd been scarred.
Yeah.
Because it was so horrific.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how people are doing it. I know people are watching this stuff on Telegram, on the Hamas channel. Honestly, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, and one last question about that period. Were you, other than the pain and the horror, were you scared? Like for the state of Israel, for like security wise?
I was scared. I think the fact that they were able to do this, to enter into people's homes, to kill them in their beds, and these were people who, I mean, this kibbutz Be'eri that I happen to be working with, but also all the yeshuvim tend to be left wing.
Right.
Vivian Silver, one of the Chatufim, is a very, very big activist for peace.
Right.
And it just, it meant,
One of the hostages.
yeah, it just meant nothing. I mean, and also anyone that had contact with Jews was taken indiscriminately.
Thailandish workers.
Thai workers and others, and it just so horrifying. But I don't know why, but I'm not afraid of dying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid of my children dying. So the fact that one of my children, Hillel, is in the army, even though he's in a very safe place, that worried me much more than anything happening to me.
Sure.
And also that my granddaughter has a boyfriend who's in an elite unit.
Mm-hmm.
And so those things were very, very frightening to me. But I wasn't afraid of the sirens. I wasn't afraid of having to go to the safe room. I wasn't afraid of driving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know why, but that's not where my fear landed.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how did you get to this? So let's move on to the Be'eri thing. So when you were, and after that, I have some thoughts about how this connects to the Holocaust, but we'll get there.
Okay.
So how did you get to going there? How did you even know it was happening? How did you decide to go down there? What made you realize that that's what you're going to do? I mean, so many people right now are busy volunteering. Those that can, let's say, obviously people need to work, etc. But those that are volunteering, there's so many ways to volunteer, as well as civil society. Really, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to see how much, the government is failing in many ways, but the civil society is just astounding. The kinds of organizations that have propped up. So why did you choose this thing, and how did you get there?
So one of the things I think I've never shared with you is the guilt that I feel about not helping in other times of crisis, either because I had little children, or because I was working full time, or just because it wasn't so much the ethos of our family to volunteer, which I'm embarrassed about.
Mm-hmm.
And now I felt like it's not going to happen again. This time I'm going to volunteer, and I'm going to volunteer significantly. And really wishing that I had come to this realization earlier and at other times. So what I wanted to do, let me start over. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do. And at first, I also felt that I had to see what was happening with my children. And Leah needed some help because Hillel is her husband and she has 3 children, and she wanted to come for a week, and I felt that was my first priority to help.
Leah, your daughter-in-law.
My daughter-in-law, yeah. And then the following week, another daughter-in-law, Elena, asked me if I could be with them because her husband, Yoni, had to go abroad, and she was going to be alone for a week, and she's a nurse, and she had to do shifts, and she didn't want her children to be alone if a siren went off. So these were my first priorities. But when those 2 weeks were over, I had already talked to other people and heard what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is my friend who I mentioned earlier, who's a trauma therapist. And she is also the trainer of therapists, so she's really at the top echelons. And she had heard that right after October 7th, the families of these 20 or so yeshuvim that had been attacked were taken to hotels, and that Kibbutz Be'eri it was going to be taken to the Dead Sea, though I understand now that some people are also in Eilat, and she was working with them. And immediately I felt, I really want to do that, but I'm not a therapist, so why should they? It was by invitation only.
Sure.
You couldn't just come there and volunteer. And I think that that's correct, because we're dealing with such a damaged and painful, sensitive population. So I asked her, I said, listen, I'd really like to come down there, but I can accept no for an answer, because I do understand that I don't have the tools, the credentials to do that, but I would be willing to do anything. I said, if they need someone to peel the potatoes, I'll come down. Something about the situation made me feel like that's where I should be. So she said, are you sure about that? Do you want to be there even if I'm not here? And I said, yeah, I definitely want to come, and I'll definitely do anything. So I didn't know what that meant. And my school is back. I'm still working full time, and my school is back at work, and I didn't know what was going to be with that. And so she called me back the next day, and she said, look, I was hired by an agency that deals with mental health professionals, but there's another organization called Israel, and they would be willing to have you come, but you just have to realize that you really might be doing anything.
Yeah.
So I said, that's fine. And she arranged that I could come for 2 nights to the David Hotel, which is where the Be'eri people are. I should mention that in the Dead Sea, there are many, many hotels, and each one is filled with refugees, but not from Be'eri. So I've been sleeping in a hotel where the refugees from Sderot are, and I have been working in the hotel where the refugees from Be'eri are. And
so in the hotel for Be'eri, so like I'm trying to imagine what it is. So is the hotel just filled only with Be'eri people?
It's a 5-star hotel, and it is largely filled with Be'eri people, but I think it is still taking some guests here and there. But as some of the Be'eri people choose to leave, they bring more refugees in.
I understand.
So, but that's the minority, of course.
So would you say that overall, except for maybe a few that are in Eilat, from what you said before,
I don't know how few it is, but
how many people are we talking about from Be'eri that are in this hotel? I'm just trying to get a picture.
I think the entire kibbutz was 1,200 people. I would say we probably have, and I'm just spitballing here, about 800.
Okay.
Something like that.
Wow.
800-900.
And for what we know, how many people in Be'eri were killed?
I think I thought it was 85, but I read recently that it was 130.
Okay.
And 33 were kidnapped, and some are missing.
Okay. So what is it? So you get there.
So I get there, and as I said, they've told me I can come for 2 nights.
Right.
And I didn't realize at the time, but this was kind of a test to see if I would find something useful to do.
Sure.
And they immediately put me to work they have kind of a makeshift store. No one actually uses money to pay for anything. As Alicia said earlier, the amount of volunteering and reaching out in this country is absolutely magnificent. And they weren't even taking secondhand clothes when I came there. I brought a suitcase of secondhand clothes, and they said they're only taking new things because so many clothing companies, were sending brand new clothes and brand new shoes. And the last day that I was there, a watch company came and gave everybody a new watch, so that they wanted the experience to be normalizing. So they made it look like a store, where you could browse and you could find things and you could take things, and not just clothing, but it could be also like hygienic products and anything that you can imagine someone needing when all of their stuff has been taken from them, when they've come with nothing.
Yeah.
So they put me to work there, basically schlepping stuff and stacking clothes and stacking boxes. And despite my proud statement that I was willing to do anything, I realized I wouldn't be happy doing this. And I would do it, but I wouldn't be happy doing it. And also, I'm not a youngster anymore. All the people around me were like in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit older. So my back was hurting, and I thought I don't know if I'm going to withstand this, and I felt shame about that.
Yeah.
Let me just go back in time. I have a hobby where I craft, and I have a Cricut machine which cuts things, and you can do any number of things with this machine. And I thought, this is an unusual thing to have in Israel. Not many people have it. Maybe I'll bring my Cricut machine down, and maybe I could do work with teenagers, because I do have 40 years of experience,
Right.
even more, working with teens.
Yeah.
And I actually have like the equivalent of a BA in counseling, so I didn't feel like I had no tools.
Yeah.
So after I finished my shift at the store, I went to the person that had allowed me to come, and I said, do you have any objection to me just setting up my Cricut machine? There's this gigantic mitcham, this gigantic open space
Right.
that has been given to Be'eri alone. And that in itself is something I should describe at some point.
I'm going to ask you about that.
Okay, sure. But I said, do you mind if I find a free space? And I just set up my stuff, and I just sit there and start making things. Maybe somebody will be interested.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, sure, go for it. So after I'd finished my shift and had some supper, I would say probably at around 7 o'clock at night,
Mm-hmm.
I set myself up, and I skipped one step. I had also spoken to one of the people who's in charge of the mental health situation of the teenagers, and asked her to send something out on WhatsApp that I was going to be doing this.
Yeah.
But when I saw her, she said to me, nobody answered. So I thought there was no interest. And instead of sitting in the place where I'd said I would be, I decided to sit in the main lobby, hoping to attract attention.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm working, and I have this feeling kids are looking at me kind of with their from the side and wondering what this machine was, but no one's coming over to me. And I'm figuring, okay, this is a bust. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then a woman who I've since become friends with named Mimi came over and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, right now I'm putting stickers on bottles, like personalizing water bottles, because there was a benefactor who had given hundreds of water bottles. Would you like one? And she said yes. And so together we designed it. We chose colors, we chose fonts, we chose picture, and we're creating this. And that broke the ice. The minute that there was one person working with me, suddenly a whole bunch of kids came over.
For sure.
But even more interestingly, apparently 15 kids had showed up downstairs where I was supposed to be.
Oh.
And suddenly we were inundated with people. It was almost too successful, because I really couldn't deal with 15 people at once.
Right.
But I still didn't know if I was going to be staying more than 2 nights. I was so happy that these kids had come, but I actually stayed up till 3 a.m. with them.
Wow.
Because I didn't want anyone to leave without their water bottle, or because I didn't know if I'd be back. When I woke up the next day, so Dina, who's one of the people that is nominally my boss, and David came over to me, and they said, is it true you stayed up till 3 a.m? I said, how do you know that? He said, everybody, when they went to sleep, said they still saw you down there. and finally we asked the kids, how long were you down there? We couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
We hope you'll stay. I said, can I stay doing this, or do I still have to work in the store?
Right.
They said, no store.
Yeah, just this.
What happens very often in crises, and we saw this also in COVID, is that teenagers get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Elementary school kids, borderline middle school kids, there's usually a program that takes care of them.
Right.
But these kids get lost. And what was happening in the hotel at that point was that the teenagers were basically sleeping in the whole day and up all night. So the fact that I was willing to be on the night shift made this very valuable.
Interesting.
So I did set up, and I was inundated.
Yeah.
Okay.
So before we talk about what's been happening since, so really maybe you can take a moment to describe what is this hotel? You said 5-star hotel, right? Yeah. But now it's become a refugee camp. Right, basically, and it's a refugee camp with I'm assuming that many refugees, and when they're refugees, and definitely in this situation, there's a lot of it's not just a place to be, right? There's a lot of things that have to happen. All these services you're mentioning, right, that have to happen. People, I don't know, I can't even, there's the technical elements that they need help with. There's government assistance that they need. There's emotional assistance that they need. So what does it look like?
Okay, so first of all, I want to repeat that I came in 2 weeks after this started.
For sure.
And people that were there before told me how unbelievably chaotic it was. Because really everybody was just doing what their inner self told them to be doing.
Of course.
The government had not acted quickly enough to help these people. So this is all civilians that are coming in and doing.
Right.
and this company Israel that does a lot of work with in any situation of crisis. So by the time I came, even though it still looked quite chaotic to me, I was told this was amazing compared to what it was.
I'm sure it was.
So there's a very, very large, like imagine the size of a basketball auditorium, or a basketball field.
Sure.
Let's assume it's that size. It's all open. It's has some pillars. It has a few, like there's a couple of different levels with steps. But everywhere you go, you see that somebody has taken it over for some purpose. So the most pressing purpose, of course, was therapy. And in the time that I've been there, I saw people sitting quite openly with a therapist for all to see. And by now, when I've been there for 3 weeks, the kibbutz, which is a very strong kibbutz and takes care of its members, plus Israel probably, have built like little
tents?
Not tents so much as little, they have little
Cubbies?
Not cubbies, not tents. Okay. And let me just I'll find the word.
Oh, sure.
They have dividers that are going to set up an area here so that a person can have therapy with some modicum of privacy.
I see.
And then they have a Toranut, a schedule of people who are there just to do the admin part of it, where people sign up with them. Once you make a connection with a therapist, you do not move to other therapists if you're happy with the connection that you have.
Of course. So
that there'll be some continuity. And I understand there's work also probably being done with families. I haven't seen that, but I'm sure it's true.
Yeah.
And in addition,
they need to heal collectively. They need to heal on multiple levels, these people.
I'm sure that this is going to be healing that's going to take years.
I know. What I mean is that they're probably, I'm guessing, right, it's not just that it's only happened to individuals. Yeah. It happened to families, it happened to neighbors, it happened to communities, it happened to the whole kibbutz, it happened to the whole country.
Yeah, there's a certain positive element to that, because it didn't just happen to one person. They can get comfort from each other because the other person knows what they're going through.
Right.
So I think right now, the things that are happening therapeutically, I would say probably are trying to adjust them to normalize their life a little bit, to hear what they're going through. I know that there are also efforts by the government to debrief them in order to have all the information, in order to I think that there's a certain amount of fear that with AI and with everything like that people will later say this didn't happen.
For sure.
And so a lot is being done to document it.
It's already happening.
And
those claims.
Right. And also because they might have information that would lead to information about those that were kidnapped or those that are missing.
Right.
So there's a lot of interviewing going, and in those interviews there are also therapists present, because it's very distressing.
For sure.
So another part, you see there's like a circle of sewing machines. I don't know where these sewing machines have come from, but you often see high school girls there. And they're being taught how to sew, they're being taught to make things, and that seems to be a popular corner. There is an area where Israel is sitting, which does all kinds of administrative stuff for people. Like they were the ones that gave me my tag, and they found me a hotel to stay in.
Right.
There is on an upper floor, not in the same open space, a section where there are people from the government who are.
Close the window.
Sure.
Sorry.
Most of the people that are here have lost all their official documents because their houses were burned down or destroyed. So there are government officials that are helping them get a new Teudat Zehut, or figuring out. There are people from the HMOs, from the Maccabi, from Leumit, from all these various health organizations, helping them recreate their records there. So that everything that every kind of official record that can be they don't have to go to other people. The people are coming to them to try to help them. And unfortunately, there are people who have lost people who have to file death certificates and wills and things, things like that. And so that's also happening. And then if all that is happening, let's say when you enter into this open space to the right, to the left, to the right, is an area that really looks like a kindergarten. And there is again, the amount of change that's happened in this place since I arrived. When I first arrived, it was just a lot of people sitting on a cold floor playing games with kids.
Yeah.
But since then, it has become they're brought in. I don't know, how do you say machlatzot in English? It's kind of like
I mean, it's these reed it's these reed roll-ups that you
yeah,
can like mattresses, right? These
right.
like reed mattresses you
So
can
a
roll up.
lot of those have been brought, but not from reeds, like really comfy ones.
Uh-huh.
And they've brought
Like yoga mats.
yeah, but I'd say even like freestanding rugs.
Okay.
And they've brought nicer furniture, and they've also made some, like, cut off some areas, like there's a little area where people can read, where there are a lot of books,
Mm-hmm.
and there is another area where younger children can play together, and so it's become very homey
Mm-hmm.
and sweet. It's still, it's very what's it called? When something is not organized with a plan ahead of time and it just comes together,
Oh,
like potluck or
spontaneous?
what?
Spontaneous?
It's spontaneous, but also patchwork.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no one carpet matches another, and
Yeah, I understand. Of
and
course.
there are poofim, and there are
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
things.
Uh-huh.
And the other part that's happening over here is a certain amount of art therapy. Like, as the day gets longer, as older, and like if we get to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and we're getting already, the teenagers have woken up.
Yeah.
So that area, very often you'll see middle school and teenage kids doing art. And there is also the store that people shop in to get
Right.
their stuff.
And that has mainly clothes?
No, it has a lot of things that people need. It's hygienic products, clothing, shoes. It has, like, anytime someone points out to a need, then immediately someone acts on that, and it'll show up in the store the next day. And,
Yeah.
and that's how the watches happened, actually.
Right.
Because someone mentioned that none of us have watches anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And every day the store has different things, and it has a rotating staff, but some people that have really committed themselves and are there all the time. It's a very physical job, and it's very you're really worn out by the end, because you're getting all these boxes. You have to sort the boxes. You have to find places on the shelves. You have to throw out old stuff. It's a constant turnover of stuff, and it's also a lot of meeting with people, because people are coming to shop and they talk to you, and so that it's only on the surface a normal experience.
For sure.
Underneath, it's. I remember on the first day that I arrived there, also, I had worried about what I was going to wear. I thought I should just come as plainly dressed as possible. And I come there and I see people are wearing these lovely clothes, but they don't have shoes. They have like flip-flops, or they have, because clothing had arrived, but shoes
Right.
hadn't
Shoes
arrived
haven't,
yet.
yeah.
And so that it was odd, but I was very happy for them that they had new clothes, that they weren't taking anyone else's hand-me-downs, that they
Right.
were feeling that was helping them to feel human.
Yeah.
Uh,
So as part of your, so you've been working with these kids for a while. And do they, you're very attuned to people. You've been, of course, an educator for most of your life. Maybe you're still an educator, in terms of not maybe, I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of your role. But that's always been something that was very much part of who you were.
yeah.
And what kind of connections do you like? Do you feel you're building connections with kids while you're there? Are they, what is that connection? Is it mainly just by talking about daily, sort of like normal things, so to speak, or does it go beyond that?
So I think here too there's been an evolution, because I didn't know what I was getting into, and I assumed that the skills that I have from being an educator were going to carry me through, and they have, more or less. But I'd never taught in this kind of situation before, so I have learned a lot. And soon I'll tell you what I'm doing tomorrow with them, and it's different than what I came the first day.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I came bringing I have kind of an art studio, and I have lots of different materials, felt and cardstock and vinyl, and I have this big machine. I schlepped everything. I like brought my studio there because I didn't know what I was going to be doing. And it was really overkill, because it hurt me to schlep it. And it also, you don't realize that you're going to have a table, but you may not have a gigantic table, or, so you have to get used to spontaneously adjusting according to whatever happened that
Sure.
the day before, or changes other people have made that you haven't been,
Right.
told about. And I also didn't realize that. Look, it's such. I can't say that I know what the relationships between all the people are, and I'm trying very hard not to pretend I'm a therapist, but to just allow whatever comes to come to me, not to seek it out.
Yeah.
So, for instance, on this photo blog that I sent you to see, there's a picture that I took at 2 a.m. of a little girl. I would say she's probably about 5 years old, and a mother who's probably mid-30s, and they look a lot alike. I just assumed they were mother and daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter is the girl is combing her mother's hair and braiding it, and this is going on for about an hour. I took a few pictures because something about it just spoke to me.
Sure.
And only the next day did I discover that she's not the daughter of this woman. I have no idea what their relationship is, but clearly she didn't have a mother.
Wow.
And was this her caretaker? Was this some mother who had lost a child? I to this day don't know, because I won't ask.
Right.
I just feel like what happened to them is so tragic and intimate. That
They have to build. They're building something, and you don't want to.
I don't want to mess with it. And I also remember reading in one article that someone said, and I think it was from Kibutzim, yeah, people are coming to look at us like monkeys in the zoo. And I'd never wanted to give anyone the feeling that that's what I was doing.
Right.
That I was there to be able to put a check on, okay, now I've seen the people from Beirut.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of things like that going on. So I decided that what would work for me is I would make what I'm doing so attractive that kids would come over to me. And through the work, if they happen to talk to me, then
they'll talk.
Then they'll talk to me. So for a lot of them, there was no talking. Sometimes I'd hear them talking to each other.
Yeah.
They've been interviewed by a lot of foreign outlets, so I hear them comparing how many outlets this one gave an interview to and how many outlets that one gave an interview to. I don't mean to minimize that. They're talking about all kinds of other things as well, but they're still kids,
Sure.
I'm always concerned because I don't stay up till 3 a.m. anymore, but I see kids who are quite young who are up very late at night. I wonder what the story is there. I worry for them that there's not enough supervision, and that there's, or that maybe the parents just can't, and again, no judgment, because their life is so unnatural right now, and because the boundaries that they've grown up with aren't there right now.
Right.
So friends, on the very first night when I stayed up till 3 a.m, like nobody could wait. Okay, they had to have their sticker on their bottle now.
Yeah.
But there was one kid who kept giving up his turn. And I would say he's probably about a 15-year-old boy. And there were quite a few pushy people who insisted that they would get ahead of another person online. I'd made a list. And I'm deliberately not mentioning names because I don't want to identify anyone. And when it came to his turn, most of the kids were choosing to put their name on it with some kind of an image. When it came to him, he said to me, I don't want my name on it. Is that okay? So I said, sure. I said, what do you want? He said, did you ever read Harry Potter? I said, sure, of course I did. He said, so you remember it? I said, yeah. He goes, I want to have the sword and the shield of Gryffindor. And on it, I want to have a ferocious lion. And he had drawn it for me.
Yeah.
Okay. All that time that he was just sitting there, he was drawing. And I really need the image to be a clean image to be able to make these stickers and to put it through the machine. So I said to him, I love what you've drawn. Let's take a look at the stock imagery. Maybe we can find something that's like this. And we looked for a while, and this was part of the process I do with the kids in general. I let them design things. I let them decide, this was blue, this should be blue, this should be green, this should, And so we find a sword, and we find a shield, and we find a ferocious lion. And then we're looking through my vinyl to see what to pick. And we picked some colors when suddenly I have this memory that I have this beautiful gold, shiny thing, and I bring it out to him, and he goes, oh yeah, it has to be that. And I found a coppery one for the lion, and he was so happy, to have what he wanted. But at the same time, he started talking about what had happened to him, and I think that my spending that original time with him made him feel like he had to tell me, and it was someone who had there were 4 kids in the family. Now there are only 2 kids in the family. One is missing and one is dead. And he told me about his time in the safe room and what it was like to know that the terrorists were on the other side of the door. He told me about all the WhatsApp messages because Be'eri is a very connected kibbutz.
Right, everybody was
so
chatting
everybody was chatting and saying, "Oh, the terrorists are here. The terrorists are there.
Yeah.
Here's what you can do if smoke is getting into your room. Here's what you can do with, if there's fire, or I just saw someone killed. So he's telling me all that, and it's of course absolutely horrific. And he tells me how they managed to get out of the safe room, how they managed to survive. And at the end, I just said to him, "Could I give you a hug?" And he said, "Sure." And he hasn't come back to do anything with me since then, but he finds me once a day to say hello and to give me a hug. And I never ask him any more questions. I just want him to know I'm there. So that's the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah.
And I would say that over the 3 weeks I've been there, maybe it's happened with 8 kids.
Yeah.
And at one point I said to some of the therapists there, I feel maybe I'm not doing my job right because really so few kids are talking. A lot of kids are coming to do art, and they said, you don't understand, if even 1 kid comes to you, you've done your job.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, but I've heard a lot of hard stories. And towards the end of last week, I felt like kids have gone back to school.
Oh.
So they put up like a pop-up school in Ein Gedi, and the kids get on the bus on the morning, and they go for 3 hours of school, and they come back. So suddenly the mornings, there are no kids around. So what I'd been doing the other times, since I was staying up so late, is I wasn't working in the morning. I was working for my school in the morning over Zoom. But now I thought this was an opportunity maybe to get to the parents. And so I set up a little station making flowers for the parents, and I just did this one time. And
you can, by the way, see some of those flowers in the.
That is true, but those are not the ones we're making. But yes. And again, the same kind of thing happened where someone came and broke the ice, and then there were other people that didn't come to do anything because I think that the parents are so overwhelmed with what has happened to them, and they don't have so much room for anything. But a few parents came to me and said, "Oh, I used to do something like this," or "I used to do," and what I did after that, I spoke to the powers that be there, and I said, what if I were to schedule a time to make flowers, not just be there, and just put something up on the Be'eri list, because apparently there's a Be'eri. Nobody tells you these things. You have to find them out by yourself.
Sure.
And so that people will know I'm doing it. And if they feel like coming, they can come. So we're experimenting with that this week. And I've put up a list. I said that not tomorrow, I come a little bit late tomorrow, but on Monday between 10 and 12, or between, I don't remember now. I probably ended it at 11:45 because the kids come back from school. Anyone who wants to make flowers can, and I put a pretty picture up there.
You're interacting so much with the kids. Have any of the parents of the kids who've been interacting, like been there while they're doing it, come to talk to you?
So some of the parents regard me as a babysitter, and they will say, "Oh, can I bring my child to do work with you?" I'll say yes, and then I'll discover it's a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because then I say, I really, Zalomatim, it's not really, they won't be able to do this, and I won't be able to teach other kids because I'll be taking care of this child. So I feel a little bit bad about that. Sometimes younger kids just come to watch, but generally during the day I'm getting middle school kids, and at night, if I'm doing something interesting enough that they haven't already seen and done, I'll get some high school kids. And that's what I meant by the learning curve.
Right.
That for a while, so many kids like doing the water bottles that I just kept doing water bottles because I figured that's what they like. But now I'm realizing that for me to keep the interest of kids, I have to be more like a real teacher. And so what I've decided to do this week is, just like I scheduled things for the parents, I made 2 sessions in the afternoon of Sunday and Monday, where one of the things I'm doing is people can make stickers for their phone covers, because I think teens are into that. And we're also maybe going to do something for the hostages. I haven't decided yet, but I bought a lot of yellow paper with some ideas that I want to do.
Yeah.
And I also want to train some kids to be my assistants.
Mm.
Because what I would like to do, if I'm able to, is maybe raise some money to get some more of these machines,
Right.
donate them to Beirut, and have these kids
Right.
learn a new skill and also have some status that they can teach other
For
kids.
sure.
So that's my game plan for this week. We'll see
Cool.
if it works.
So you started out by saying that you had felt for a variety of reasons a need to go there and to do this, to be part of this volunteering effort. I don't know. I thought that I've had as a parent, not related to this tragedy. I've thought this for years.
Yeah.
Was how a lot of times through our parenting of our kids, we also heal things that we went through.
Yeah.
Right. In a sense, as a parent, you have a chance to meet similar challenges that your parents met with you, but do things differently. Right. And through that, you somehow heal. I see that with all sorts of members of my family.
Yeah.
Also, like other parents, and I see sort of dealing with finding their way. Like I've seen at least one person, mourn their childhood through the fact that they're better at parenting, whatever, but they somehow that's also a healing process. And I'm curious for you, especially growing up in the shadow of the Holocaust and then going out over there and being able to help these people. I don't know if it connects, but I was wondering, I think I mentioned this to you last week. I was wondering if there was an element of being able to, I don't know, heal parts of the memory of the Holocaust by being able to be parts of the memory of the Holocaust by being able to be there for people that went through this. Maybe it's too new.
Maybe it's too new. Yeah, I think if that's going to happen, maybe it'll be looking back.
Fresh, yeah.
Right now, what it is doing for me is I'm feeling like I'm doing something meaningful, and it's very hard for me to leave when I get there. When I'm usually there for 3 days and 2 nights.
Right.
Very hard for me to leave, and very hard for me to come back, because there's this dichotomy in my life between my normal world and the world in the Dead Sea, and I feel somewhat neglecting the normal world because my head is always on the Dead Sea.
I know what you mean.
And I see other people who are beginning to resume their normal life, and I think that's really healthy, and I think I have to do more of that. But I think maybe on some subconscious level, what you're talking about is happening. But right now, I just feel like that's where my heart is. I'm very much in the moment. And I mean, there are a lot of other things that are going on. I haven't told you everything that happens over there, but in terms of me feeling this is my place right now, I'm feeling that very strongly.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say or share right at this moment?
I think that I'm blown away by the amount of generosity of the Israeli people, and that I think we don't have the leadership we deserve because we're amazing. I also just want to, for anyone who listens to this, say that my heart goes out to the families of the Chatufim and the families of the people who died. It's just a nightmare.
Chatufim is hostages.
Yeah, and but I do feel strongly that what is happening now is not a war of choice. It's a war that we must do. We have no choice because we have nowhere else to be. And I think we're doing an amazing job trying to be as ethical as we can, and at the same time having a very singular purpose of going forward. And the only other thing I would say is that as time passes, just in case people are interested in what's happening with these Kibutzim, the Kibutzim are getting antsy to leave the hotel.
Sure.
Right now they have pretty much an open-ended ticket, but they're used to running their own show. And so one of the things that has been suggested to them, there are 3 high-rise buildings in Yerushalayim that have not been populated yet. And they were offered to the Beirut kibbutz. Very, very brand new, nice buildings.
Wow.
And they were offered to them either as a temporary solution or, some people are talking about not going back to the kibbutz. Some people are saying yes, going back to the kibbutz. And they're leaning not to taking it because they can't see themselves living in an apartment. after they've had this pastoral life.
For sure.
And there are not enough open social spaces, common places. And this is a very social kibbutz.
Yeah.
So being able to find what they're going to do next is going to be very difficult. And it's very, very frightening to a lot of them.
I think that's like, one of the whole country on some level is going to be looking for what to do next.
Yeah.
It's going to happen again, like I said before, like on multiple levels, individual, community, country-wise, a whole bunch of.
But when I think about what to do next, I can still come home to my house.
No, I am not trying to compare at all.
Right.
All I meant to say was that what you're describing about this big question mark about the future. I think that there's a big question mark about the future, not the military future, which there was a question mark, but there right now seems to be less of a question mark of that. So thank God, we'll live. But how will that life look? And for sure, not like the closer you get to the blast site, which was, these Yeshuvim, the more heart-wrenching it is to just think about the kinds of choices that they have. What does their life even look like next?
And also that they will not be able to probably stay together as a community because there will be from what I understand, the older people are talking about going back to the kibbutz, but the younger one, especially young mothers, can't imagine it.
Yeah.
And this is sometimes parents and children, like there are generations that are living there.
Yeah.
And so one person I was talking about said, I want to go back, but I don't think my daughter wants to go back. And that means I would be separated from my daughter and my granddaughter. So I have to think about what's next. And this is a very strong, united kibbutz. It's going to be heartbreaking for them not to stay together as a community.
Right.
It's going to be just one additional torture.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Like you said, at least we see that there's I think I might have quoted this in one of my earlier episodes, but Ran Baratz, who's a right-wing commentator, he writes a column in Kol Rishon. He wrote this I think after the first week. So he wrote this column which he said, I think a feeling that a lot of people feel. He said, when the terrible things began to happen, the government or the not the government, he said actually the state, like he was referring to everything, not just the government, the state was nowhere to be found. But that's when Am Yisrael appeared.
Right.
So like you said, we have an amazing people that are in search of good leadership.
Yeah.
Let's hope we can get that.
Absolutely. All right.
Anyway, Ima, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all the things you're doing.
Thank you for all the things you're doing.
Okay, then. We'll take that deal.
Okay.
Okay.